online retailers need to realize that at the end of the day, online is another channel. So it's about retail in general. Don't overcomplicate it. Go back to the basics. Who are you trying to engage? Because you can't be all things to all people.
Hello and welcome. I'm Elizabeth Formosa, the founder of Fashion Equipped and devourer of all things fashion, business and mindset. In this podcast, I'm speaking with thought leaders, change makers and entrepreneurs about the business side of fashion and everything in between. Fashion Business Mindset is your front row seat to real stories from designers, brands, entrepreneurs, makers and mentors. We'll discuss how to launch and grow a fashion business and give you insider access to the future of fashion. So let's do this together and ensure that you're equipped to make the fashion business your business. Welcome back to Fashion Business Mindset. Today I am thrilled to welcome Joanna Robinson, the Chief Marketing Officer at The Iconic. Jo's expertise is around driving customer-centric growth and developing and executing innovative and strategic marketing plans. With over 26 years of commercial experience across retail and FMCG, Jo has worked with the likes of P&G, Unilever, J&J, Colgate, Palmolive, Estee Lauder and Chatime. Her career spans Australia, North Africa, the Middle East and Turkey, working right across marketing, sales and leadership. A strong advocate for women's empowerment, diversity and gender equality in the workplace, Jo is also passionate about mentoring and developing the next generation of marketers. In this episode, we explore Jo's journey to becoming CMO at The Iconic, the dynamics of her role, the key trends and opportunities shaping the future of e-commerce, and The Iconic's commitment to innovation, sustainability, and inclusivity. We also dive into how Jo manages her mindset and well-being amidst the fast-paced retail landscape, and her advice for brands aiming to scale in today's competitive market. I loved every minute of my time with Jo, and no doubt you will too. So let's dive in. Jo, welcome to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I'm very happy that we've made this happen and I can't wait to dive into all things The Iconic. But before we do that, I would love for you to set the scene for our audience, share a little bit about yourself and your journey before becoming the Chief Marketing Officer at The Iconic.
Yes. Okay. Well, God, I've been working for nearly 3 decades. So very long time. I started with Procter & Gamble. So the first half of my career was all fast-moving consumer goods. I started in WA, so I'm a Perth girl originally, actually as a territory rep. So that was my first job out of uni with Procter & Gamble. I didn't really know that much about them, except that I knew that they did supermarkets predominantly, and I was actually a pharmacy rep. So that was a great way to kind of cut my teeth. And then I was moved over to Sydney by them 18 months, 2 years later, and did kind of account management. So moved from sales into national account management, and then went from Procter to Johnson & Johnson, where I moved into marketing. So I've kind of done, the first half of my career was very FMCG focused. So I've done Colgate Palmolive, Unilever, Procter & Gamble and J&J. So I always say a lot of dish detergent and a lot of toothpaste and sort of really the unsexy brands, if you like, but more functionally driven, but a really good beginning of my career. And 6 years in the Middle East, 4 years with Unilever, and then moved into beauty with Estee Lauder, which was a phenomenal role because I looked after North Africa, Middle East and Turkey. So I got some fantastic travel and went to really diverse, really interesting, multi-layered places, was exposed to a lot of different cultures, reported into Paris when I was at Estee Lauder. So that was a definite benefit. Loved that job. I looked after Tom Ford and Estee Lauder. came back to Australia with my family in 2014 and spent the next part of my career working again in beauty with L'Occitane. And then before the Iconic, I was in the bubble tea world with Chatime, who were really a very Gen Z focused bubble tea, definitely having a moment, sort of globally. But Chatime was one of the brands that was able to kind of transition from Eastern to Western audiences, which was really exciting to be a part of. And then found myself in fashion at the Iconic, and I've been here for just over 18 months now. So that's kind of been my journey so far, Elizabeth.
Well, it's quite the journey and it's very diverse. So no doubt all of those skills and being calibrating to different demographics, different audiences is serving you well in your role now. So what has that transition into fashion been like? And can we share what a day in the life of your role at the Iconic is like, heading up the marketing team?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things I love about marketing is that I really believe that, marketing is a way of thinking, it's a methodology. I've sat on quite a few panels where we talk about the four Ps are still the four Ps. I love the advancements that we've had in the space of data and analytics because it enables us to know the customer even more. But essentially, we're still trying to identify a target audience, find out the key messages that will resonate with him or her, really understand them from a kind of not just a demographic perspective, but from a limbic profile or psychometric perspective. So who they are, how they think, what they feel, find the right channels to talk to them, and then make sure you're in the places that intercept with, their lives. So I feel that whilst, I've gone across categories and countries and cultures and industries, the actual art and science of marketing and the four Ps enables you, if you get that right and have that kind of approach, to seamlessly go across all of those different platforms, if you like. So the move into fashion, I think, has been, exciting because I love fashion. I love that you get to redefine your personality every day by what you put on. So I find, as a woman, I've always loved fashion, but I love looking at that from a consumer perspective now as well. But again, I'm just kind of applying the same methodologies that I have, whether I was working on toothpaste or detergent, but now into, a category that I personally find very fulfilling. So the Iconic's been a great segue for me into the fashion industry and into going from kind of an omni-channel experience, which has been the bulk of my background, into a pure play online, which has been really interesting because you have access to a lot more of the data and analytics to enable a much more personalized understanding of your customer and the way they shop. So yeah, so it's been kind of baptism by fire for the last 18 months because it's been coupled with a really tough couple of years in terms of retail. So I think it's kind of been having to be as agile as possible, rebuild new strategies, come at things in different ways, show up differently in terms of what's going on in the market, fight some of the larger players, particularly globally, that have kind of come into this market with a bang, and just making sure that we've got all the basics right. So I guess, and that's like an ongoing journey really for us over the last couple of years.
I'd love to dive a little bit deeper into some of those opportunities and those challenges. Thanks for sharing the backstory, because it's great to hear that those skills that you've acquired over that journey are certainly transferable. But no doubt, as you said, there's been a baptism by fire. So
Yes.
perhaps we could talk about at a high level, Jo, how the Iconic is currently trading. I'd love to hear, what factors have been driving the growth at the Iconic. As you've said, you've had to respond and be very quick on your feet in terms of what's happening in the marketplace at the moment, and most brands are experiencing the same. But how's the Iconic going? And perhaps we can dive into some of those, amazing strategies that you and your team have been working on to take things to the next level.
Yeah. Look, I think anyone who says, and I love at the beginning, Elizabeth, when you talked about the fact that the industry is so much more transparent. I think industries across the board, we're all kind of leaning on each other in some of the tougher times, and we're all learning from each other, and we're kind of in the trenches together. And I do a lot of conferences and speaking gigs or panels where I'm exposed to other CMOs and other marketing people and retailers, and we're all saying the same thing, which is it's tough. We thought this year was going to be a tough year. I think arguably it's been tougher than we thought. We've definitely seen that the customers have less discretionary income. We play in a category, an industry sector that is driven by discretionary income. So that adds another level. People they're much more value conscious. They're really looking for you to define that value exchange. So why should they part with their hard-earned cash and buy on your platform and buy your brand? So I think for the Iconic, and certainly when I landed here, similar to other e-com players, we'd got very addicted to what we could measure and the pay performance drugs. So there was a lot of focus on the bottom of funnel on conversion, and a lot of the metrics was all kind of short-term focused. My first job to be done, if you like, when I got here, especially coming from more of that, FMCG background where everything is driven by consumer insights, but also by branding and really purist branding about what do you stand for and how do you show up then to your identified customer base. It was really about coming back to everything that the Iconic used to stand for 13 years ago when it burst out of the gates. And it was about innovation and disruption and really reframing and redefining retail in the Australian and New Zealand marketplace. And I think that in the last 5 years, we had just kind of lost a bit of the secret sauce, everything that was iconic about the Iconic. And I think what we really spent the bulk of our time on last year was redefining our purpose internally, which is around the Iconic is here to create a better way for people to shop. And we love that better is all about kind of a growth mindset approach. So it's about how do we try and do better every day by our customers, by our employees, by the planet, by our partners. We love that better really represents that stretch, if you like, and also has a bit of humility because it says that we've always got, there's always something more that we could be doing, and there's always a way to be better rather than saying we've arrived. And I love that about the Iconic. I think we're trying to truly amalgamate this whole, we're an icon and a symbol, but at the same time, the humility of trying to do better every day. So that was kind of the internal definition, I guess, that's kind of galvanized the company. From an external point of view, we really had to go back, as I said, to the DNA, the essence of what the Iconic really stood for. And we ostensibly have gone down the path of rebuilding the brand. And the articulation of that was what we saw in the first half of this year. We partnered with Dentsu Creative, and we came up with a creative platform which is called Got You Looking, which was really our re-announcement strategy back into the market. It simply says, we're back. We've got you looking again. The whole idea is we're using some beautiful creative that makes people look twice. And it's purely and simply around kind of raising our fashion credentials, taking us away from being just about a promotional or a discount house, which I think, we'd along with a lot of retailers, we've kind of really flogged the whole promotional platform. And I think we'd become known for training our customers to put things in the wish list and then wait until we then told them it was going on sale. And I think that there was a perception in the market that the Iconic was very about, the place to go if you wanted a good bargain. And that was really because we'd let the whole brand, the essence of the brand, dilute. So it was a fairly easy job in that we could go to Dentsu Creative and say, listen, let's go back to everything that the Iconic stood for, even 5 years ago, when we really were putting money across our investment across the full funnel rather than just at the bottom of the funnel, and leaning into the fact that the legacy love, I guess, that's been with a lot of our customers have been with us for 13 years and they're absolute loyalists. I mean, one of the things I love about this brand is if you say to someone, I work at the Iconic, the usual response is, oh my God, I love the Iconic. And I love that because I'm like, all we have to do then is find a way to take that magic, articulate it in a way that really resonates, and then sprinkle it as far as possible. And that's really what we've been focused on this year. We've got some great partners. Our media partner is Love Media, and they've done some really fantastic, media buys this year to enable this gorgeous creative to kind of pop up all over Australia. We've wrapped buses and trams, and we're really about trying to show up where our customers are and remind them about everything that is iconic about the Iconic. So that's been the real part of the journey. And there's been a lot of influencing and educating and aligning along the way. I think a lot of what marketing does, I'm sure any CMO would attest to this, is around stakeholder management. Brand building can be scary for companies, particularly when you're in a challenging macroeconomic time, because the investment is a far longer play. So it's not a paid performance campaign where you're immediately able to measure the results in the correlation sales period over the next week or so. It is literally something that can take 6 months to 12 months to see the payback, and also is a significant investment in terms of the size. So that's been part of the education process. I'm also a big believer that, at the end of the day, marketing is a mix. So it's not any one thing. It is the combination of everything working together. And we've had I would say a challenging year, but we've really built a really solid strategy. We've been really single-minded about where the dial shifters are. And I think we've de-siloed a lot of our organization. So Got You Looking is a great example of a true cross-collaborative project where we had people from fulfillment, from tech, from product, from marketing. One of the things I always say is brand is owned by the whole company. It's the most valuable asset that we have. It's not just owned by marketing. And I think, though, unless you can really walk the talk and get people to really feel galvanized and working towards the same North Star that any one department is, that's really where you get the true magic of everybody working towards something together and feeling part of the journey. Like everyone was, one of the things I love, sorry, I tend to get really passionate about talking about brand, but we have a channel that's called Got You Looking Out in the Wild, and everyone in the whole organization, including the fulfillment center, so 1,000 people, are constantly updating on that channel where they've seen the creative out in the wild. And even their partners are sending photos saying, "Oh, I saw this on a bus in Parramatta." And I love that, because as the CMO, I get so excited to see everyone from every part of our organization feeling some ownership around this campaign. And I think it's been very powerful, both internally as well as externally for our customers.
Well, I think true to its name, it's certainly getting people looking, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Fantastic.
true to its name. There's so much you just shared there, Jo. There's a lot to unpack, but you certainly rolled up your sleeves and dived in, that's for sure. I love that you raised that, brand building is a long game, because I think we've seen this recalibration in the industry between performance marketing and brand marketing. And very much at Fashion Equipped, we're about brand first, building that brand DNA, purpose-led brands, connection to customer, everything that you've actually just mentioned. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the consumer insights, because you said there was a kind of this reset phase, and at the end of the day, it's all about the customer. What research did you embark on? You had your support of your agencies, of course,
Yeah.
but what did that look like? Was it surveys? Was it focus groups? Like, how did it play out?
Yeah, look, it's all of the above, to be honest. I think, when we briefed Dentsu, well, and in fact, the also Love Media, when we kind of briefed the agencies and said this is the job to be done, we knew obviously that we'd measured from the brand health pyramid that we were seeing quite a significant decline kind of quarter on quarter in terms of that unprompted awareness, which is a real, indicator of brand health. So we were just becoming less relevant, if you like. People really weren't naming us or remembering us, and that to me is definitely the case. If you're not out there actually reminding people, this is why it's so important. But it's not just about just doing sort of any old above the line messaging. It really is about, what do we want to stand for? And I think elevating, coming back to being about fashion. So we are a fashion and tech company. We really strive to make the shopping experience as seamless as possible on the app, because that's how we show up for our customer. So that was really important to us. But it is about coming back to, what the brand really stands for. So in terms of the process, it was taking, over the last 13 years, we've done some really great pieces of research, both quant and qual. So and I am a big believer that a lot of the work has already been done. So how do you don't just start again. I mean, sometimes there's CMOs that come in and say, let's just ignore everything that's been done and we're going to do a new piece of research with some new partners and start again. And I think you've got to multi-layer everything that's already in existence, because this brand and this company has been a phenomenal player on the retail landscape in Australia and New Zealand, has really kind of made some huge inroads. So how do you really kind of take what's already working and has worked, but then how do you add the new elements to make sure that you're evolving the brand and looking at what the pain points are now in this market, in this landscape? Because you can't just look at it just in isolation. You've got to look at who the players are. And we've had some, as I said before, some major global players come into this market. Amazon's landed in a huge way and they're, it's like a David and Goliath. They have a lot of money to spend. So it's a completely different landscape that we're operating in versus, 5 years ago, and certainly kind of, 10, 13 years ago. So taking a lot of the research that we did, we partner with a research company called Retail Doctor Group. So they help us measure essentially the brand health. So we took, and we have just actually anniversarized the brand health pyramids, or the funnel, if you like, from last year, because we wanted to see whether or not we'd had that shift in terms of unprompted brand awareness. And we've actually been able to shift that by almost 3 points, which is a phenomenal result, I think, in a market that's been very noisy and very competitive and had some major players spending a lot of money and certainly taking some market share. And yet we've still been able to drive that unprompted brand awareness and purchase intent, so further down the funnel as well. So all the metrics are showing that it's working. And again, it's not just the brand campaign, it's the brand campaign, I guess, anchoring everything else that we're doing underneath that. And also that full funnel approach, rather than just being totally obsessed with kind of the conversion at the bottom of funnel. So we, as I said, we work very closely with Retail Doctor Group. We do actually measure brand health. I mean, for me, you've got to be anniversarizing it every year, because it does take a year to see brand really have that full impact. But at the same time, we do customer sentiment, and we have an NPS score. I mean, customer service also falls into the customer remit, so that sits within my team as well. And it is about taking some of the insights that we're seeing. So what are our customers looking for? Ongoing, we're known for our USPs of fast delivery and easy returns. Our customers still love and still actually articulate that as being one of the two of the many reasons that they come to us. They love our curated but wide assortment that's very relevant to them. We have 1,600 brands, 160,000 SKUs. So I think our customers know where to head in terms of that first stop for fashion. And then I think the other insights are about the fact that they see us as being trustworthy. And trust, for me as a CMO, is one of the most important attributes that a brand can really own. It's really important to me. And I know at The Iconic, it's something we really hold ourselves accountable for, is do our customers trust us as a player and as a brand. So I think it's just making sure that we are delivering to the expectations of our customers. And to do that, you've got to make sure that you are regularly talking to them, whether it's like surveying through customer service, whether it's, overlaying the NPS, whether it's taking some of the qual and quant research that we do with our partners, and then also looking at that versus some of our competitors, because we're not naive to know that our identified consumer is also shopping at some of our major competitors. So it's like, what is the experience that we're surfacing up for her versus a Myer, a David Jones, and Amazon, for example?
Yeah, some really powerful insights there, Jo. I'd love to just unpack the brand health pyramid a little bit. So for those tuning in who are not familiar, with this brand health check, what does that mean and what's involved? What are some of the key areas of focus and metrics that you'd be looking at? So perhaps some of the brands tuning in can do their own internal health check and kind of get started themselves.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, there's different ways of doing it. There's different research companies. I mean, obviously, one of the major players for a long time has been Roy Morgan. I think certainly in FMCG, there were kind of two players that everybody lent on. I think there's different ways now of looking at it from and different partners that you can partner with to deliver that. So it depends what you're really identifying as the key metrics. At the end of the day, prompted and unprompted awareness is, and what you generally do is you look at it in terms of the general population. So are you having cut through as a brand within, the general population of Australia, which is always indicative of, do you have any share of mind with just the average Joe Blow on the street? And a lot of that is to do with spend. You can buy that if you have enough money. So you could just blow out a whole lot of advertising, and their general population will say, yes, I've seen the advertising, I know the brand. So whilst that is an indicator, I think more importantly, you want to identify then within the segment that you play in. So for us, it's fashion buyers. So people that are just buying fashion, are we resonating with them? Because they are the ones, whilst it's fine to have general population say that there's a high level of awareness, their intent to purchase might be fairly low because we're not relevant for them. So they're aware, but they're not likely to buy. So the brand health pyramid that's really going to be an important metric for a CMO and the marketing team is to say, okay, well, and for us, it's about fashion buyers. So if they're being surveyed as to where they would buy fashion, so unprompted, meaning we're not suggesting any names, we just might say, when you're buying fashion, what are some of the brands that you would turn to? Now, ideally, you want people unprompted to say, one of the first places I shop is the Iconic. So, and you want to be able to look at that in terms of your identified target customer group, which is fashion buyers. Now, you can segment that further and say, like, for example, at the Iconic, our core target is between 35 to 55. That's actually, the bulk of who we have now, remembering that a lot of those people have grown up with us in the last 13 years. So the challenge is always to feed the funnel and to get the younger. We obviously have brands where we do focus the 25, sort of 20 to 30, and we have certain brands where we're trying to feed the funnel with that younger audience. But we really want to make sure that of the 2 million active customers that we have, the bulk of those are 35 to 55. And are we basically continuing to grow our relevance and the intent to purchase with that identified target group? And as you move further down the funnel, then there's prompted, where they're given, a number of brands that they would purchase. It's almost like the consideration set. So are we in the consideration set? So they might say, yes, I shop at the Iconic, Maya, David Jones, eBay, Revolve, there's a number. So we want to be in that consideration set. But I still think the most important one is that unprompted, because that really talks to brand health. And then as you go further down the funnel, there's intent to purchase. So of your consideration set and that set of brands, who are you most likely to purchase with, which is all about you're then pushing down towards, conversion to purchase, meaning they convert to a sale or a purchase. And then the idea is you try and build then loyalty off the back of that. So ideally then they're having a great experience and they're more likely to come back. And then we measure them in terms of things like order frequency and when they come back, how much are they spending, and kind of the usual metrics on that kind of loyalty retention side as opposed to the acquisition side. So there's a lot of science to it, but I think as marketers, we're trying to look at all of those metrics that make sense and hold ourselves accountable in terms of resonating with our identified target audience group.
Such powerful insights, and everything's measurable. So I think that's the key, isn't it? Everything you're doing from this moment or from the new activation of Got You Looking, everything's measurable. So you can track,
100%.
be
Yeah.
intimate with that progress over time. And obviously, if things need to be recalibrated or pivoting at any time, you can do that based on that powerful data that you've got access to.
Exactly.
In line with the brand kind of reset, Jo, has there also been shifts, therefore, around the Iconic's brand portfolio and the product mix? You've spoken about the age demographic, and it is a lifestyle. We're talking about fashion lifestyle here. How has that played out across product and brand?
Yeah, our strategic vision for fashion is to curate the best assortment of local and international brands. We have an exclusive range. Some of those are our own labels, and some of those are brands, global brands that you can only purchase at the Iconic, Pull & Bear, Bershka, for example. So we want to make sure that we're also the first place that people will go to if they want to purchase, some of these amazing international brands. So that's been important in terms of we're very single-minded in terms of which brands, we really want to support a lot of these really well-known Australian brands and also emerging Australian brands and New Zealand brands for that matter, but also making sure that we're able to curate a really relevant group of international brands for our customer base as well. So that's always at the forefront. I think designer brands is super important as well, because we do know whilst value is very pertinent at the moment and people are making sure that their dollar is going as far as possible, there will always be people, particularly in fashion. I have an 18-year-old and her friends, they're very into their brand. So they would rather save their money and buy fewer items that are really good quality, that are brands that they really subscribe to. It's a very quality exchange as opposed to, certainly when I was 18, I was more about probably buying the latest fashion, and it was less about quality and more about, volume, quantity. So I do think this younger generation are very about that value exchange being about quality more than quantity. So that's been really interesting to see as well. And I think, and this wraps up into part of our proposition about who we are. We have a people, planet, positive strategy, which we implemented from 2019. That is really important to us. So how we show up to customers in a way, when we talk about better as part of our company purpose, we are trying to do better by the environment as well. And we're very cognizant that we're in fashion. So there is an element of responsibility. I think we have a long way to go. And I think we need to be really honest, transparent, and humble about that. I think any fashion brand, there are some doing it really well. And I think that we are on the journey. So we're certainly trying to, we're halfway through our B Corp certification. We have a considered edit where we currently have our assortment meeting considered criteria of about 15%. We want to be 50% by 2030. So we have some very, very strong metrics that are really important to us as a business. And they're important because it's the right thing to do, but they're also important because we know it's what our customers want. And when we talk about feeding the funnel, we particularly know it's what this younger generation of customers, like my daughter, they will bounce from brands that are not doing the right thing in some way, shape, or form, or are at least starting on the journey in terms of, being more considerate of the impact on the environment, on sustainability at large. So that comes into our thinking as well. And then at the end of the day, we are about fashion. In the latest piece of research that we did, we actually came up very strongly in the area of trend, which is super important for a fashion company. We want to make sure that we are articulating the trends globally. And again, kind of, I guess putting them together in a way that really resonates for our target audience. So she may not want to be the most fashion forward, but she certainly wants to know what is hot at the moment and what's our interpretation that she can buy into, that she's going to feel confident and kind of it's going to be compelling to her.
It's all about the experience, isn't it? I love hearing about the considered edit, though, and just the value of brand and those investment pieces, because we hear a lot of this narrative, but it's great to hear that a retailer like The Iconic is seeing that trajectory increase, and basically there is the consumer demand there and it is growing. So I think that's just a great, validation that the industry is on the right track, because we've been speaking about, sustainability and circularity and transparency for so many years now. We can start to feel the shifts actually, manifesting, which is a great place to be.
I mean, we do know from a customer perspective, 93% of Gen Zs prioritize sustainability and ethical practices when making purchasing decisions. I mean, that I see that in my own, little focus group at home of Summer and her friends. So but I think it's really important to pull it apart and say, yes, we know that we're delivering to customer needs, but I also think it's important as a company, it's the right thing to do. And I had the privilege of working for Paul Pullman when I worked for Unilever, who really drove, he really got, he was one of the first people to say that those bigger multinationals had a responsibility to the planet, and that it would be it was the first mover responsibility. So if a company like Unilever would rewrite their PPP strategy and really walk the talk, then that would have a ripple effect in terms of similar sized companies. And when you get the big players moving that way, everyone will follow. And I think, he was an amazing leader, and I think had the courage to kind of really rewrite how Unilever was doing sustainability and holding themselves accountable. And I think it's had a really positive effect, then that ripple effect on similar companies following suit. So I think at the Iconic, it's not just because the customers want it, it's because it is fundamentally the right thing to do.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I asked the question, because I know those who are tuning in, if they hear that The Iconic is being successful, in this space, it gives them more reinforcement, more confidence, especially those who are doing that really hard work in the sustainability space. So
Yeah.
it would be interesting data to dive a little bit deeper into.
Yeah,
But
great.
thank you for sharing that. So, Jo, let's dive into innovation and technology. I would love to talk about
Yes.
AI and all of the things that are happening at the Iconic. I mean, you're leading in the e-com space. So again, our listeners will be thinking, right, what's the Iconic doing? What are we doing? And where's the gap? But is there any technology that you've implemented? I saw an article on Rag Trader about AI and the long laundry list
Yeah,
of
there's a lot.
everything the Iconic
Yeah.
is doing around implementing AI into the business. There's apps, there's a whole host of things. What could you share with our audience that has actually worked, that you've implemented, and perhaps you've seen it really, move the business forward?
Yeah. Look, I think, and I said it at the very beginning, we are a fashion and tech company. And I think one of the exciting things for me, coming from more of an omni-channel marketing background and moving into a pure play online, has been the access to technology that again enables us to have a totally enhanced experience with our customer. Also, though, the expectations are far greater. I think customers that are online, they're online with a lot of companies, and so there's a really high baseline of what their expectations are, and I think that hopefully the Iconic delivers and will continue to do so. So yes, we use AI. We have it in the back end in terms of everything from how we forecast to how we report. As I said, customer service falls into my remit. We use AI technology through Zendesk in terms of our chatbot. So obviously there's the AI that's embedded on that side. I think what's really exciting from a search perspective is we use multimodal search, which is using the large language models, which basically is, from a prompt perspective, you can do everything from kind of visuals to more kind of colloquial language. And we know it's all about the quality of the prompts that you're putting in. But I think the way that this shows up for customers is so exciting, because you can actually now put into our search engine, into the navigation page where you're on the homepage of the Iconic, and you can put in 70s disco party, and it will surface up for you for that customer based on the algorithms of how you bought previously and kind of what your look and feel is, but also what it thinks. It'll scrape all of our data and all of our products and the 160,000 SKUs that we have, and it will surface up for you, Elizabeth, or for me, so in a different way, what my interpretation of 70s disco party would be. So I'm getting a way more personalized experience, but also, of course, from a commercial perspective, the conversion likelihood is going to be far greater, because of the technology that's being used to make it a very curated, personalized experience. So I find that really exciting, not just as a customer, but certainly working within a tech company as a marketing person. We also have recommendation engines. So once you're actually sort of purchasing a jacket, we will then do wear it with, which will suggest the correlating items that add to that look. That's all AI generated. We've recently introduced Fit Finder. One of the biggest areas or challenges, I guess, that our customers find is, especially because we have international brands as well, as how do you calibrate all the different sizing from all the different countries? Because what we're also trying to do, obviously, is while we want to make it a really easy, seamless experience, we do want to reduce the return rates for our customers. I mean, whilst we make it easy, it's still an extra step that you would ideally prefer not to do, but also it does have a negative impact on the environment. So for us to really kind of lean into sustainability, part of that is educating our customers that, ideally they don't want to be returning. I think when we first launched, there was a whole, part of our USP was you can buy 3 different sizes and 3 different colors and try it all on at home and send back what you don't want. And whilst that is definitely still, people can do that, we want to educate that there is obviously an impact of doing that. And if we can get the size guide right, and they're actually comfortable and confident that they are buying a size that will fit, then we can help them reduce the return rates and also the challenge of having to go to the post office and do all of that for the customer as well. So we've recently introduced Fit Finder. It's an AI size advisor. that delivers personalized size recommendations. So you can put in all your measurements. You can also do correlations of other brands that you've bought in a size 8 or a size 10, and it will tell you that, it gives you a recommendation of whether 70% of people have bought the size 10, which we think would be more comfortable for you, and 30% have bought the size 8. And then you can make a more informed decision. That is definitely having an impact, a positive impact in terms of, I think both the consumer sentiment, so customers are responding to it really well, but then also on reducing our returns rate.
Yeah,
Um,
that's really powerful. I think it's one of the biggest pain points of shopping online. I know for me, like I'm petite, I'm like 5 foot nothing, and I've got some curves, and I'm not the stock standard size. And there's nothing more frustrating, especially if you're buying something to wear that weekend, and you're like, and then it turns up, and you're like, that's a.
100%. Yeah,
So I think
100%.
any technology in that space, it's a win-win. Obviously, it's a win for the customer because they actually bought the product because they want to keep the product. But as you rightly said, Joe, reducing that negative impact with returns and everything that goes along with that for a business, the costs and the environmental side. So that's really powerful.
Yeah.
With AI and
Yes.
technology, if
Yes.
you were to pull your crystal ball out, where do you think it's going, Joe? Like in the next couple of years? Or on the flip side, where do you want it to go? Like, is there a pain point in your business where you think, oh, I just wish I had, a tech solution for that right now, and that would be a game changer?
Yeah. Look, I think it's already kind of completely revolutionized the way, not just our customers, but customers in general. I
Yeah.
think where we're moving to, so we've got some really exciting projects in the works for 2025 around that area of loyalty. But then it's also about how do we use AI, particularly for our tier one customers. So we have, you know, our tier one customers are very, very loyal. They shop on average 33 times per year. They spend on average about $7,000 per year. They're very, very valuable to us. And one of the ways that we're looking at how we can deliver a superior enhanced experience to them using AI is, could we have virtual stylists?
Mm,
So yeah, again, based on the algorithms of how they shop in a very personalized, curated way, they are able to, sort of shop the site with a virtual stylist that will not only serve up to them, really relevant clothes that they might be interested in, but also potentially match with items they already have in their wardrobe.
yeah.
So that's kind of one of the ways that we're looking in the future for AI. And then the other, and we're already starting to play around with this within the creative and production space, is how can we use AI that will help enhance the creative that we deliver, but also then help from a cost point of view as well, because it means that we may be able to reduce the amount of, on outdoor shoots that we do, or on location shoots, or can we shoot the model and drop the backgrounds in within a studio, but
Yep.
still in a way that kind of is authentic. It doesn't look like it's been done by AI. And I think there's a lot of fashion brands and brands in general that are playing around with that. We certainly are, and some of it's quite successful. Some of it we're really honest with ourselves and saying that's not good enough, because we're always putting the customer at the core of everything we do. But I think that is the next frontier of, we'll see, in AI models, for example.
Yeah.
I really believe in the end it'll be about hybrid models. It's the same. We have an amazing creative team at my team, and the creative team are amazing, but that does not mean that we don't also lean on agencies, because I think it's more powerful to make sure that you're always looking at both. And I think that will be what we do with AI. It's not about AI taking over. It's about how do we utilize the best parts of AI, so that we can work in a hybrid model that I think enhances what we do as humans. So I think if we can use AI to automate some of the stuff that we're manually doing at the moment, that will enable more creativity and more innovation, because I think humans will then have more time to do those things, which
Mm.
will also benefit everybody.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to be content generating machines, right? In the
Yes.
fashion industry, it's all about the content, and I can see AI just getting better and better. There was an activation that a brand called Who is Elijah did, which is a perfume brand, and they did this activation on Bondi Beach where it was a perfume bottle that just blew up. It was just like a big, blown up perfume bottle. But it
Amazing.
was AI generated, but people in the comments were like, "How did you do that? Like, how did you get that on the beach? Like, how did you make that happen?" And it's like, it's
That's
not actually
so good.
real. I
Yeah.
think there's that blurring the lines also between what's real and what isn't. But I think what you
Yeah.
rightly said, Joe, is we've got to get that human element. We've got to get that balance right.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you said, it's going to be a hybrid. We don't want to, remove
No,
the human
it's
element.
not
Wearing
replacing the humans. It's
no.
working with the humans and
Yeah.
enabling the humans to focus on the right areas then as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the virtual styling as well. I think that how powerful that will that be from, for the customers.
Oh,
Sounds like
I
we
think
might be able to scan our wardrobe and see.
at 100%, that's the idea. Because again, you can kind of say, well, this is, this is what's in my wardrobe currently. And I'd love to have a little curated assortment of items that would go with that, and accessories and potentially makeup and, the whole kit and caboodle.
I'm just waiting for the holograph of the stylist to be able to land right here in my office, and
Exactly. I think it's coming, Elizabeth. I really do.
I
Watch this
agree. I think it's
space.
coming and more as well. It's exciting, but slightly scary on the flip side as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
Now, Joe, you mentioned your team a moment ago. I would love to dive behind the scenes at the Iconic. I'd love for you to share who's on your marketing team, what are the key roles within the team, and how do you cultivate, a culture that is very much aligned with your values? Because I have read a lot about your values around women's empowerment and diversity and all of those wonderful things. So, how do you nurture that? And then, of course, have that flow through to a very customer centric team that's working at a high standard.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Well, I mean, firstly, I look after all things customer. So that is everything creative, production, marketing, insights, engagement, customer service, which goes kind of across everything. Brand sits within the marketing team as well. Also, partnerships, or we call it marketing revenue, which is very much about the marketing solutions revenue. So that also sits within customer. And I think what's been really evident, and again, it's about de-siloing. I'm a big believer that we work much stronger if we can have visibility across what everybody else is doing. And where does partnerships end and brands start? Well, they actually all need to work together. So we actually have some people within our teams that are a hybrid. So they might have literally one foot in marketing solutions, but the other foot in brand, because they need to actually write an insight that will drive how we then deliver to one of our brand partners, for example. So I think the de-siloing has been super important. Values wise, I really believe in people first. I think that if you get the culture of an organization right, people feel valued. If they feel that they're part of something bigger than just what they do on a day-to-day basis. So I'm a big believer in visionary leadership. So what is the vision? How do you create a North Star that everybody feels galvanized towards? How do you I think empathy is super important. I'm a big Brené Brown fan.
Yeah.
I think women as leaders, we tend to be naturally empathetic. And I actually think that's a superpower. I think emotion is a superpower. I think I'm very vulnerable with my team because I'm also a mum and a wife, and I have aging parents, and I have all the stuff that life throws at me. And I think that, I manage my teams, if you like, and I don't even talk about it as manage, but holistically, like they have lives and partners and kids. And I'm a big advocate for working parents. When I first had my daughter, God, 19 years ago, you almost had to pretend that you didn't have kids. You really, I remember people kind of rolling their eyes and they would say, oh, she's late to work and she's leaving early. But I was up at 5 and had done 5 million things to be able to drop my daughter off at daycare full time when she was 11 months to get to my job, and really trying to do the juggle. And there was no working from home. There was no flexibility. And I think it's been great to see in the last 20 years that has changed, and women and men, but parents are set up way more for success now than they ever were. And I think I've always been an advocate for saying you can have both. You really can. I do believe that you just need some flexibility about how you deliver. So I think how I really try and drive the culture within the customer team is you've got to create a culture of trust. And that means that we've got to have each other's back. So I always say we can have really robust conversations together in the boardroom, but when we go into the wider organization, we're aligned, and we have each other's backs. And if people are, saying stuff about anyone in your team that you have, you need to defend one another, because it is about one team. And that
I
takes
love that.
time. I mean, I think when I first came into this, into the Iconic, one of the first jobs I had was a team reorg, which involved having to let people go, which was incredibly hard. Incredibly hard, because it also has an impact on the people that are left. And again, I think you try and do those things with kindness and compassion and empathy, because the people that are left, they're expected to kind of pick up and keep going. And a lot of them have survivor's guilt that they're still here and some of their friends have been moved on. And I think it's just kind of having empathy for all those elements of it. They're not just here to do a function. They are human beings that are impacted by all the trials and tribulations that life throws at them. So
I love that. That sounds like, an amazing culture that you're nurturing there, Joe. And I think, again, relating on a human level, as you said, people aren't just there to do a job. They've got lives, they've got families, they've got young children. I can totally relate to what you said about your daughter, 19 years ago.
yeah.
My son, I'm talking 27, my son's 27. So I think 27 years ago, I'd drop him at childcare and then I would drive. I was a retail buyer at the time and I had to be at my desk at 7:30 in the morning. And it was the same thing. It was a culture back then where no one really wanted to know about your challenges with your 1-year-old. It
No.
was just like, get it done. It was just, just push through, and whatever's going on,
Yeah.
that doesn't happen until after hours. And it was very challenging. It was very challenging. You had to have a super, supportive network to be able to do that in those days. And nothing much has changed now, but it is amazing to know that, leaders such as yourself in a business like the Iconic, being looked up to by so many people in an organization, that you do have that empathy. You mentioned empathy is a superpower, which I love, because often it's not looked at in that light.
Yeah.
It's looked at
Yeah.
as, vulnerability or a weakness, which, now we've moved on. It's 2024 and it's such a different time. And I think, having that workplace understanding and the diversity and the nurturing and the connection, that's where people want to work. So I would imagine that your retention of staff is pretty solid.
Well, it's certainly something that is a work in progress. I mean, I think there's always things we can be doing better to come back to the company purpose. And I just try and build the most amazing culture I can within the customer team. And I work with an amazing exec team, and, they're trying to do their bits for their teams. And hopefully we can make it more cohesive, I guess, across the whole of the Iconic, because I really think retention of good people is super important.
Yeah.
You want to attract them, but you also want to make sure that you're holding on to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Joe, just flipping it on to you for a moment,
Yeah.
how do you balance your own role? Obviously, you're the support for your
Yeah.
team. How do you balance your time, and what do you do to work on, your own mindset and well-being that allows you to perform at such an, optimal level?
Well, I think I'm really lucky that I have some amazing people in my life that are my support network. I have an exec coach that I've worked with for the last 3 years, and she's been fundamental. I mean, she sometimes becomes a bit of a therapist, but she's very about legacy, purpose. She brings it back to, who am I being right now? How does that line up with how I want to show up in the world, not just show up at the Iconic and as a leader? So she's been, hugely beneficial for me. I have an amazing husband who, for many years has done the lion's share of, I mean, he has a more flexible career. So he's done the lion's share of certainly the cooking, if I'm honest, but also a lot of the kids stuff, because even though I have a flexible job, it's more difficult to be as accessible. So I think that was a decision that we made, and I'm very lucky to have that support and the logistical support that my husband offers, as well as the emotional support. I have my dad who actually lives on my street, and in the retirement village down the street, and he is a huge mentor to me. And I have some amazing friends. And I think one of the things I love about as you get older is you get really choosy because you don't have as much time about the people that you actually do have time, to be with, and they are the biggest cheerleaders and me of them. And so I have some amazing people in my life. And then I have some routines. The mornings are sacrosanct to me. I get up very early. I live in Bondi, so I'm kind of up at 5:45, and I go to the gym at Bondi Icebergs and watch the sun come up. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily super effective at the gym, but even just the fact that I'm there and seeing the sun come in the ocean, and it's so perspective generating, and I think I try and be mindful and in the moment. I try and be, when I'm with my people, I'm really with them rather than trying to multitask. And the old me was always about trying to do 20 things at once and filling more and more things in my day. And again, I think one of the luxuries of getting older is you get more wise about your time, because it is probably the most valuable asset that we have as human beings, and how you can spend it. And and then there's all the normal things of trying to get a lot of sleep. I do fill my day with a lot, but I really try and get 7 to 8 hours of really good quality sleep every night, because I think that is an absolute game changer in terms of how you can then show up in the world.
Yeah, some really amazing tips there. I'm sure our audience will be writing all of those down. You've got an amazing support system, which is fantastic. And you've mentioned, the word mentors and coaches a couple of times, and I couldn't agree more. I've had so many amazing mentors and coaches support me throughout my career, and I don't think I would have, achieved what I've achieved without that support. For those tuning in that perhaps haven't worked with mentors or an executive coach just yet, and maybe they are sitting there, feeling a bit burnt out, especially at this time of the year, and we're going into a massive promotional period where
Yes.
it's all going to happen over the next few weeks. What insights would you share, Joe, in terms of how that's worked for you? Would you encourage them to dive in, work with a
Yes.
mentor, work with a coach?
Yeah, 100%. I'm also I'm a very big, I think mentors can be either sex, but there's something very powerful about women mentoring one another. My exec coach is a woman. I've had a man previously. They're both amazing, but I actually have joined a lot of women's associations, and I'm one of the mentors of Mentor Walks, which is this amazing organization that we support at the Iconic, where once a month you do a walk around the Opera House, and we generally get kind of 3 mentorees that come from varying backgrounds, and it's really just so that some of the more senior women or women in senior positions such as myself can kind of share the knowledge, but also just, I guess, share insights and things that we've learned over the last 20, 30 years to this younger generation of women leaders. And I find that very powerful. I think if you are someone that either wants to be a mentor, there are so many amazing organizations that you can sign up for, and it is very rewarding. But also on the flip side, I think it's important for mentorees to seek out really good mentors, and to seek out particularly women. We still have some evening out to do. I think within the corporate world, there's still 1 in 4 women that are in the boardroom. We're still paid less in the dollar. So there is some kind of leveling of the playing field to do. And I think this is why it's really important, more so than ever, for women to really, as you climb, you turn around and take some women with you. There is room for all of us in the boardroom. And I think giving back from a mentoring perspective is super important for women in senior positions as well. So there are so many organizations and associations. I think just lean in and find your tribe or find a mentor, because they are fundamentally game changing, I think, in terms of driving your career.
I absolutely love that. And I absolutely agree. And there is room for all of us in that boardroom for
There
sure.
really is. Yes.
Joe, throughout your career, you've accomplished so much. There's been a lot of diversity in there and a lot of achievements. What would you say has been your proudest moment or most significant milestone to date, whether that's at the Iconic or before your time at the Iconic?
Goodness, I think that's a really interesting question. I think for me, it always comes back to people. So, I could definitely say there's been some I'm very competitive with myself. So if I'm going to do something, I really want to do it well. So there's always going to be the commercial. Yes, I launch brands, turn brands around. I do have a thing for actually turning brands around. I find that quite fulfilling, kind of unpacking what the problem is, where it's gone wrong, how we can put it back together in a different way. So I like to think of myself as a change agent. So I've had some nice commercial successes. But the thing I'm most proud about over my nearly 30 years is the teams that I've built. And when I see my teams being promoted into senior roles or taking jobs where their whole worlds are widening, I think that true for me is true success, because I know that I've made a little bit of a difference in someone's lives, the same way that people have made differences in my life. So there's no one thing. It's just that I would be most proud about the teams that I've built and seeing those people go on to achieve their own, career goals. That's been something that I'm really proud of.
I absolutely love that. Now, Jo, a couple of final questions. We know the big ones for our audience who are wanting to
Okay.
take they're wanting to take their businesses forward. You're going to need that crystal ball again. But as e-commerce continues to evolve, Jo, where do you see the biggest growth opportunities for online retailers in the next 3 to 5 years?
The biggest opportunities, I think, and we've spoken a lot about AI, but I think online retailers need to realize that at the end of the day, online is another channel. So it's about retail in general. I think it's the same thing I said about the 4 Ps. Don't overcomplicate it. Go back to the basics. Who are you trying to engage? Because you can't be all things to all people. Even if you could, from an investment point of view, all it does is dilute the impact, because you become less relevant to the people that you're really trying to resonate with. So just go back to the basics and get the basics right. Think about online as being like, it's fantastic because you have more data and analytics, and you can really get granular about the using the data to really engage on a much more personalized level. So that's a benefit. But essentially, whether you're online or offline, it is about how you show up for your customer, and how do you continue to entertain, engage, surprise and delight, and how do you really shift them emotionally? So how do you be more than just the product or service that you represent, but how do you really drive that emotional connection? So I think, and then it's about leaning into technology, particularly AI, for example, whatever the latest tech is, how do you use that to do what I've just spoken about in a much more compelling way? And I think from a brand perspective, I would say I always bring it back to being, yes, you've got to be measurable, but don't forget to be memorable. Brands should be both measurable and memorable.
Oh, I love that. Measurable and memorable. Jo, what excites you most about the future of the fashion and tech space?
I think just the continuation of the excitement. I think it's about the what's possible. Fashion, I've always loved the fact that it's such an emotive category. I get to redefine myself every day. I did a talk last week in Melbourne, and I wore a beautiful Shona Joy blue suit that just made me feel, in some really kick-ass high heels, and I felt really powerful getting on the stage. And then I'll go home and put, my tracky dacks on, or I put on some more kind of street clothes, or sometimes in summer I'll do boho. So I get to reinvent myself every day by my clothes. And that's one of the things I love about fashion. It can really alter how you feel and the confidence level. I think, the power that fashion can represent for women is huge. So that's something I think that really excites me. And then how do we, from a tech perspective, I come back to the iconic being about fashion and tech. We have an amazing team of product people and engineers that I get to work with every day. I'm now on stages talking about things like large multimodal search and different ways of utilizing AI. And so I'm so grateful that I work in an industry where we are continually looking at how tech can enhance what we do on a fashion perspective. So it's that constant acceleration and amplification, but also that interchange point of where they meet.
So much to be excited about, and it certainly is.
100%.
It's an inspiring space, right? So it's such
It
a great
really
place
is.
to be. Jo, congratulations to you and to your amazing dynamic team at The Iconic.
Thank
We've
you.
absolutely loved seeing the brand, refresh come to light. So you certainly got us looking, that's for sure. Can't
Fantastic.
wait to see what you do next. For our listeners that would like to connect with you, Jo, what's the best place for them to do that?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat. So yes, I would love to see them pop up on my LinkedIn.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you again for joining me, and thanks for everything you're putting out into the industry.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jo. Thank you so much for listening to the Fashion Business Mindset podcast. We'd love to keep connected. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Fashion Equipped. And if you'd like to find out more about our Start Your Fashion Business program and your mentor collective, head to our website fashionequipped.com.au. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share this podcast with others, hit subscribe, leave us a rating and review. Let's do this together. Let's make the fashion business your business.
This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose.